Today's shir is going to be on a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, and anybody who learns Mishnayos knows that there is one of the greatest commentaries on Mishnayos. His name was Rabbi Vadia mi Bar Tinura. Rabbi Vadia from the city of Bar Tinura. I have a little secret for you. There's no such thing as Bar Tinura. Many times they have tourists that come to Italy and they ask me, where is the city of Bar Tinura? They look for it all over the place. They can't find it. And I tell them, there is no such thing as Bar Tinura. Where did the mistake come from? The real name of the city is Bertinoro, not Bar Tinura. It's just that when you write it in Hebrew, you write it Beis, Reish, Tes, Yud, Nun, Vav, Reish, Aleph. So you could read it either way, either Bar Tinura or Bertinoro. And a lot of people get it from the wines, because they have a very famous line of wine which is called Bar Tinura. And that also happened because originally the old line of wines, which my father is the one who gives the hechsher on this beautiful line of wines, was called Bertinoro, but it was written in Hebrew. Then when they had to start exporting it, so they had to write it in English, so somebody just wrote the word Bartinura, and that's how it got the name. But really the name is Bertinoro. And as a matter of fact, if anybody ever goes to Italy, those people who like to go back to the places where the Rishonim were, a lot of people like to go to whether Padova, where the Maram Padova was, or Rabbi Shaya Mitrani, etc. Bertinoro is on the east side of Italy, towards the north. There's a city on the sea called Rimini. There's a little republic not far from there called Repubblica di San Marino. And Bertinoro is right there in the area. And actually they have something over there called the Badia di Bertinoro, which they say is after Rabbi Vadia of Bertinura. So the real name is not Bertinura, but the real name is Bertinoro. Number two, being that we are learning Mishnayos of Pirkei Avos, many people don't realize that today there's a minhag that we say Pirkei Avos from Pesach until, not only till Shavuos, but we say it straight till Rosh Hashono. Till about 35 years ago, the minhag was that we used to say Pirkei Avos only until Shavuos. In Tafshin Lamed Ches, in 1978, the Rebbe started saying Pirkei Avos even after Shavuos. The way it used to work those days, the Rebbe used to daven Mincha with the crowd, and then between Pesach and Shavuos, after Mincha, the Rebbe would sit down and start saying Pirkei Avos. But after Shavuos, the Rebbe would go back into his room after Mincha, Shabbos. In Tafshin Lamed Ches, all of a sudden, after Mincha, the Rebbe sat down and he started saying Pirkei Avos. So from then, we start saying Pirkei Avos every single Shabbos until Rosh Hashono. And the question is, why is it that we have some minhagim that say it until Shavuos, some minhagim that say it till Rosh Hashanah, some that say it all the time, and why all of a sudden lately did we start saying Pirkei Avos until Rosh Hashanah? And we're going to see now, there's a beautiful sikha about that, and we're going to see how the Pirkei Avos is interconnected into Shavuos and into Rosh Hashanah, and it's going to give us a beautiful insight in what this whole thing is all about. So let's go directly into our curriculum, and this is all based on a sikha from the Rebbe. By the way, there is a sefer called Biyurim LePirkei Avos, the explanations of the Rebbe to Pirkei Avos. It's a 2-volume sefer. It is amazing how the Rebbe takes every single Mishnah and he explains it in such a beautiful way. And in here is where the Rebbe discusses this. This is based on a Farbrengen of the Rebbe at the end of Tafshin Lamed Vav in the year 1976. It was Shabbos right before Rosh Hashanah, Shabbos Nitzavim Vayelech, where the Rebbe discussed this. So let's go now to our curriculum. First of all, just as a general introduction, why do we learn Pirkei Avos in general before Shavuos? Where did this whole thing start from? So we're going to see now, if we go to your source number 1, as I mentioned before, one of the greatest commentaries on the Mishnayos is Rabbi Vadia mi Bertinura, from Bertinoro. However, there's one Perek in Mishnayos where we don't have Rabbi Vadia Bertinura. If you look in your Mishnayos, there's 2 versions. There's the Mishnayos, which is printed together with the Gemara, which is printed together with the Shas. Over there, Pirkei Avos, the commentaries are Rashi and the Rambam. When you go into the regular Mishnayos, not the one with the Gemara, just the plain Mishnayos, the set of Mishnayos, the two greatest commentaries are Rabbi Vadia of Bartinura and the Tosfos Yom Tov, Rabbi Yom Tov Lipman Heller. Those are the two. When it comes to the last Perek of Pirkei Avos, over there is no Tosfos Yom Tov, there is no Bartinura, there is someone who is called the Medrash Shmuel. He is the one that has the commentaries on the sixth Perek. So let's see what he writes in the Hakdama, in the introduction. He writes as follows. Go to source number 1. He says as follows: HaTorah lo tishkon ki'im bereikon mimidos rois. The Torah does not live in someone who has bad habits. The Torah lives only in someone who is clean from bad habits, umole mimidos chashuves, and someone who has very good characteristics. Velozeh kiven Hashem yisborech, and that's when the Rebbe gave the Torah. He didn't just come and give the Torah to the Yidden. He wanted a preparation from the Yidden. What did he say? Ve'omar heyu nechonim l'shleishes yamim. Prepare yourselves for 3 days. In Parsha Yisrei, I'm sure you remember, we learned it many times, that where the Rebbe says to the Yidden, I'm going to give you the Torah in another 3 days. I want you to prepare yourself. And one of the things that the Rebbe told them, V'chein chibus abgodim, the Rebbe told them they should wash their clothing. The Rebbe wasn't just talking about hygiene. What was the Rebbe talking about? Sheyitharu minatuma v'lichluchim, that they should clean themselves from tumah, from impurity, and the shmutz, hamoinim esanefesh masogosa, that they prevent the soul of a person to start comprehending godliness. And therefore, just like when the Rebbe wanted to give the Torah, there had to be a special preparation. That's why we read Pirkei Avos, which teaches a person the correct characteristics before Matan Torah, that the people should get inspired properly and get ready for receiving of the Torah. And that's why the sixth Perek of Pirkei Avos has a special name. It's called Kinyan Torah. How do you acquire Torah? Why? Because this is the preparation to Matan Torah. So this is one of there are many reasons, but this is one of the reasons why we read Pirkei Avos before Shavuos. Now, another interesting point about Pirkei Avos before we go into our subject. Pirkei Avos generally, according to the Shas, has 5 chapters. The 6th chapter was sort of added later, as we're soon going to see that the first 5 chapters are called Mishnayos, and the 6th one is called Braisa, as we're going to see in a minute. And we're going to see now the reason why are there 6 chapters as a preparation to Matan Torah. So if you go to source number 2, Rashi, the Rashi in the Gemara, what he explains on Pirkei Avos, he says as follows: Shanu chachamim b'lashain haMishnah. The first words in the Mishnayos, in Perek Vav, are that the Chachamim learned in the language of the Mishnah. What does that mean? Of course, it's a Mishnah. Why shouldn't it be the language of the Mishnah? Says the Rashi, Koleimar Braisahi. This is not a regular Mishnah. This is a Braisa, as we're going to see in a minute what the difference between Mishnah and Braisa is. Avol Eino Mishnah, and it is not a Mishnah. Ulefisha ad achshov kol aprokim Mishnah. Since the first 5 chapters are a Mishnah, that's why the Mishnah had to start with the words Shanu Chachamim B'Lashain Mishnah, that even what we're going to learn now is in the same language as a Mishnah. Shemikan V'Eilech B'Raisa. From now on, it's a Braisa. I'm sure many of you have learned Gemara, and you have a brother or a son or a relative who learns Gemara. You'll always hear that there's expression the Mishnah and the Braisa. So the first 5 chapters are Mishnahs. The 6th chapter is Braisa. What's the difference? Go to source number 3, and the Medrash Shmuel explains it. Mishnayos nishnu b'midrasha shel Rabbeinu HaKodesh. Rabbeinu HaKodesh, Rebbe, who he is the one that put together the Mishnahs, he had a Beis HaMedrash. So whatever was learned in the Beis HaMedrash is called Mishnah. Ve'habraises, where were the braises? Nidrashu chutz lemedrashe. There were a lot of big sages, Tanoim, who were outside of the Beis HaMedrash because there wasn't enough room for everybody and other reasons, and they learned certain halachas outside. So those became braises. Ve'alkein nikru braises. That's why they were called braises. Why? Miloshen chutz. Braisa means outside. Where do we see that? Ki targum michutz mibara. In the Chumash, whenever you have the word michutz on the outside, the targum, the translation of the targum onkelos is mibara, because mibara means the outside. Therefore, the braises are called braisa from the word outside. So therefore, the first 5 chapters are inside. The 6th one is a braisa. So why take is the 6th one called a braisa? So there's a lot discussed about this in Chassidus, but generally we know that there are 7 midas, in the 7 attributes that a person has: Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. And Malchus we're going to put on the side for a moment. Generally, when we talk about the midas, we are talking about the 6 midas. Malchus is already how it manifests itself later. So the first 6, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, these 5 are considered the ones that are still sort of in the body. Yesod, the 6th one, that one is called sort of the outside one, the one already that comes to the outside. And you're going to see this in source number 4. There's a lot of places in Chassidus. I just wanted to bring this so you have a little bit of an idea that this whole concept of Pirkei Avos, there's a lot behind it, especially in Chassidus, in Kabbalah, of why is this business of the 6 chapters of Pirkei Avos as a preparation to Matan Torah. Look at source number 4, in Sefer HaMamorim of the Alter Rebbe. Pchinas Yesod hu hashpa lechutz. Yesod is already how the person manifests itself to the outside. Chesed is when a person is kind, but that's how he is. He is kind. The kindness will manifest itself through Yesod. Ve'eina bepchinas atzmi ve'nikra lebar migufa. It's called the outside of the body, from the outside. That's why the Braisa is from the outside. Therefore, the 6th chapter represents the Sphira of Yesod. But this is just one little point just to show in the concept of the 6 chapters. Okay, so now let's go to our topic. Where does Pirkei Avos start from? You guys have a siddur, right? Go to the beginning of Pirkei Avos. Where does Pirkei Avos start? What are the first words of Pirkei Avos? What are the first words? Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai, right? First Mishnah, Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. No. Look carefully in the Siddur. What are the first words? There's something before Moshe Kibel Torah Sinai. What's there? Yep. Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Leil Mabod. There's a Mishnah that we learned before that. No, there's still something before that. Go look carefully. What is there before Kol Yisrael? You see those little letters in your Siddur? Go to source number 5. These are letters which are written by the Alter Rebbe. Instructions for Pirkei Avos. What are these instructions? Let's look. Look at source number 5. The Akdam of the Alter Rebbe to Pirkei Avos. Noihagin loymar Pirkei Avos Peirik Echad B'chol Shabbos. There's a minhag that we say a Peirik of Pirkei Avos every Shabbos. Sheben Pesach le'atzeres b'mincha. Between Pesach and Shavuos, atzeres is Shavuos, b'mincha time. Ve'oimrim lefanov Mishnas Kol Yisrael. And before that we say the Mishnah of Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chelik Leil Mabod. Ve'acharov, and at the end Mishnas Rabbi Chananya ben Akashya. We say the Mishnah of Rabbi Chananya ben Akashya. Comes the Alter Rebbe and adds, V'yesh noyagin kach kol Shabbos hakayitz. There are some who have this minhag also in the summertime. Which means, between Pesach and Shavuos, everybody learns Pirkei Avos. Between Shavuos and Rosh Hashono, yesh noyagin, there are some that have this custom. So we're going to analyze this for a moment, and then from this we will go to the last Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, and then we're going to have a very, very interesting picture of what is going on here. First of all, as we said before, until 35 years ago, until Tafshin Lamed Ches, the minhag was, at least in Chabad, that we said only Pirkei Avos until Shavuos. In Tafshin Lamed Ches is when the Rebbe started that we do this throughout the whole summer. This is just a historical point. When we look in the Maimorim, the discourses of the previous Rebbe, in the year Tafshin Beis, Tafshin Gimel, 1942, 43, over there we notice that in the summertime there are Maimorim that start with Mishnahs of Pirkei Avos of that Shabbos. And it seems that the Rabbeim perhaps did say Pirkei Avos in the summertime, but it wasn't something that was prevalent. It wasn't something that everyone did. So we really need to understand what is this business here, that everyone says it until Shavuos. But in the summertime is only Yesh Hagin. Only some have the minig. Who are these some? Like, why is there these two differences of saying Pirkei Avos till Shavuos, everybody, and after Shavuos is only some? What's behind this over here? So now let's put this on the side for a moment, and let's go to the end of Pirkei Avos, to the last Mishnah, and let's analyze the last Mishnah. What does it say in the last Mishnah? Go to source number 6, Avos Perek Vav Mishnah Yud Aleph. Says the Mishnah as follows: Kol ma shebara Kadosh Baruch Hu ba'olamai lo bra elo lichvayde. Everything that the Rebbe created in His world, He created it only for His honor, for His glory. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk in Yeshaya, Perek Mem Gimel, pasuk Zayin, Kol hanikra bishmi velichvaydi. Everything which is called with my name for my honor, berosiv, I created it. Yetzartiv, I formed it. Afasisiv, and I also made it. So from that pasuk in Yeshaya, we see that everything that the Rebbe created was for His honor. Now comes the Mishnah says ve'omer, and then there's another pasuk where we see this concept that everything that the Rebbe created is for His honor. What's the other pasuk? It's a pasuk in Parsha B'Shalach that we say every single day in davening at the end of Az Yashir. Hashem yimlech le'olam v'od. The Rebbe rules over the world, is a king of the world forever, always. This is the end of Pirkei Avos. Let's analyze this Mishnah for a moment. Before we go into the details of the questions, there's something very interesting here. Many people ask, in Chassidus we have this concept which is called the four worlds. Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. Where does all this come from? It's not something that Chassidus invented. It's this pasuk. This pasuk says, Kol hanikra bishmi v'lichvaydi. That goes on Atzilus. Berosiv goes on Bria. Yetzartiv goes on Yetzira, and Afasisiv goes on Asiya. The four worlds. It all comes from this pasuk in Yeshaya. It's not something invented in Kabbalah. And that's why if you go to source number 7, this is just a parenthesis. A lot of people ask where this comes from. It's really also in Nigla, the Torah, in the revealed part of Torah, because the Medrash Shmuel brings it. Look at source number 7. What does the Medrash Shmuel say here on their Mishnah? That why does the pasuk bring these four things? Because Ratzo lichlol kol ho'arba oilamis Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. So we see clearly the Medrash Shmuel says that these four worlds is something which is in Nigla the Torah. It's not even just in Chassidus. Somebody who doesn't know Chassidus has most probably no clue what this means, but it's definitely brought in. And if you look at source number 8, there's a maimer from the previous Rebbe, Sefer Amorim Kuntresim, in Garelik Aleph on page Reish Mem Aleph. There's a beautiful discourse from the Frierdiker Rebbe, and in middle he says, Hine Ksiv, Kol hanikra bishmi v'lichvoidi berosiv yetzartiv afasisiv. He brings our pasuk from our Mishnah that everything that Rebbe created was for His honor. He created it, He formed it, and He made it. Says the Frierdiker Rebbe, Olam ha'atzilus metuar behatoyar bishmi. That the Olam of Atzilus is labeled with the title Shmi, my name. Velichvoidi hu pchinas malchus d'Atzilus. Kvoidi goes already on the lowest level of Atzilus, which is malchus, which is the last part of it. We're not going to go into the details now what that is. And then berosiv yetzartiv afasisiv hem gimel oilam esbia. And the other three words of berosiv yetzartiv afasisiv, which means I formed it, I made it, and I created it, I formed it, and I made it, go on Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. So we see that it has all a source in the Mishnah. And then if you go to source number 9, the Rebbe goes into more details. In Sefer HaSichos, in Tafshin and Aleph, in Parsha Vayigash, the Rebbe explains that this goes on how a person operates. It's a very, very interesting subject. And the bottom line is that Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya are all in our Mishnah. Okay, so now let's try to understand this Mishnah over here. The Mishnah is making a statement. What's the statement? That everything that the Rebbe created is for His honor. How do we know? From the pasuk in Yeshaya. And the pasuk in Yeshaya is very clear. That everything that I created, l'shmi v'lichvoidi, everything that is for my honor, berosiv yetzartiv asisiv. Beautiful. Everything's fine. Comes now the Mishnah and says, no, that's not enough. Ve'oimer, I'll bring you another proof. What's the other proof? Hashem yimlech lo'olam v'od. The Rebbe rules forever. What does that have to do with it? The first pasuk is very clear. Everything that Rebbe created is for his honor. That's what the pasuk says. But this second pasuk that says Hashem yimlech lo'olam va'ed, the Rebbe rules forever. What does that have to do that everything that the Rebbe created was for his honor? When we say everything that Rebbe created for his honor, are we talking about physical things or are we talking about time? We're talking about physical things. This, the Rebbe created for his honor. Yeah? And that's what the pasuk in Yeshaya says. But when I say that the Rebbe reigns forever, what does that have to do with everything that he created? Something that doesn't make sense. Because the Mishnah is talking about things, and the pasuk Hashem Yimlech Olam Va'ed is talking about time, that the Rebbe rules forever, which it's a true statement, of course, but that has nothing to do with what the Mishnah is trying to say. So therefore we need to understand, what is the Mishnah trying to say over here, that Hashem rules forever. And now we're going to see something phenomenal. The Rebbe created everything for his honor. The honor. When do you give honor to a king? We're talking about in the times when there used to be the proper kings. When a person comes into the king's palace, he definitely gives honor to the king. There's no question. He's totally bebittel, as we discussed many times in Chassidus. He's always totally nullified for the king. There's no question about it. He's in awe about the king. But when a person is in the field, he's there plowing his field, he's doing his business, is he then also in total awe for the king? No, he's not thinking about the king. Of course, if he stops from his work and all of a sudden he starts thinking about the king and the glory of the king, of course he's going to give himself over totally, etc., and have awe. But if his person is busy with something else, not necessarily will he be thinking of the king. When is there a time, though, that the whole country, everybody, is totally subjugated to the king? Everybody, from the greatest to the lowest. Is there such a time? What do you say? Is there such a time? Sure. Of course there's such a time. When is that? As it explains in Chassidus, B'sha'as ha'hachtara. When the people come to crown the king, all the people, everybody, is totally subjugated to the king. That's a time when the whole country is into the concept of giving themselves over to the king. Perhaps a example a little bit to it, but not exactly, because today we don't have the concept of a king. But even in a democratic country, the day of the elections, when you elect for a president, no matter what the people think about the president, but the bottom line is, all the people in the country that day think about who is going to be their president. This is what happens on that day. So, which means that everyone collectively is totally given over to the king, to the leader. That's why you look in source number 10, in Sefer Amorim Tavshin Gimel, in the second Seif, in Seif base, in the first Maimer, the previous Rebbe says as follows: Vehine, bemalchusa de Aaron Uroim, in the kingdom down here, when a king is here on earth, in the physical world, what do we see? That we crown a king. What do? They put a crown over his head. And the concept of crowning the king is done with unbelievable joy. And a total bittul, that people are totally given over to the king. They're in awe for the king, they have fear for the king, and they have honor for the king. Why take? Why do the people give themselves over like that? In order for the king to be a proper king, we have to sort of revoke in the king the wish, to the will to become the king. This is the concept of the crowning of the king. That what we're trying to do with the crowning, that the king should want to become the king. This is through the fact that the people are giving themselves over. Everybody. Whether it's the simple people or the big ministers. Kulam ke'echad, everybody together, Mizbatlim lefanov bimsirus retzoinam v'nafsham elav legamri mikol v'kol. They totally give themselves over to the king. Through this, he wants to become a king. Which means that it is true. A person throughout the year, when he's out in the field and he's doing his business and he's in the middle of eating or whatever he's doing, he doesn't think about the king. But the moment that he comes to crown the king, everybody thinks about the king. So now we can understand what the Mishnah is saying. First, the Mishnah comes and says, listen carefully. The Rebbe says, I created the world. Everything that I created was for my honor, for my covet. Which means, when the Rebbe created the world, everybody, the whole world, knew very clearly who is God, who is the creator, who is the king. There was no question. The problem is, says the Mishnah, that by a regular king, after the people finish the crowning process, what happens? They go home and they may start forgetting a little who the king is. Says the Rebbe, with me it doesn't work that way. The Rebbe, Hashem yimloich le'olam v'od. The Rebbe is constantly recreating the world, and therefore every single moment he becomes the king of the world. So therefore, the Mishnah is trying to tell a person, don't think that the Rebbe is a king just like a regular king. A regular king, when you crown him, you're in total awe for him. You're in total bittul. But once you finish the coronation process, you go home, you start forgetting, you go about your own business. With the Rebbe, it doesn't work that way. With the Rebbe, every single moment, the Rebbe is the king of the world. How do we see that the Rebbe every single moment recreates the world? Go to source number 11. This is one of the basic concepts in Chassidus, that the Rebbe constantly recreates the world, and this is what the Alter Rebbe explains in Shar Ha'ichet V'Emunah, the second section of the Tanya. The first one is called Likutei Amorim, and the second one is called Shar Ha'ichet V'Emunah. So in the first and second chapter, this is what the Alter Rebbe goes through. Look at source number 11. Le'olam Hashem devarcha nitzav b'shamayim. There's a pasuk that says that God's words are constantly in the heaven. In other words, when Hashem created the world, He didn't take a hammer and a stone and things and build it. The Rebbe spoke. The Rebbe said, Yehi oir, let there be light. So the letters Yehi, Yud and K and Yud and Aleph and Vav and Resh, all these letters, they formed everything in the world. And the Rebbe constantly has to vitalize those letters. When a person makes a painting, for example, he makes a painting. Once he's finished the painting, he puts his signature and he leaves, and that's it. He doesn't have to be there to keep the painting alive. The painting is what it is, and that's it. The Rebbe has to constantly recreate the world. If the Rebbe would for a moment stop the motor, then everything would just disappear. This is what Alter Rebbe says in Lucas source number 11. La'olam Hashem dvarcha nitzav b'shamayim. The words of the Rebbe that when he created the world are constantly standing there. Upirish Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov explained, Ki dvarcha she'amarto yehi rokia. The words that the Rebbe said, let there be a rokia, a sky. Teves ve'oisias elu, these letters, he'nitzaves ve'omdes la'olam, they're constantly standing there. Umluboshes betoich kol harakim, and they are enclosed in all the creation. Ad hadoimim, even a stone. A stone is not just tama, nothing. A stone is letters of the Eibishter, and it's like a motor. The Eibishter is constantly recreating that stone. Le'olam lachayosam, always to give it life. If the letters from these 10 speeches that the Rebbe made, which he created the world with, if they would go away, chas v'shalom, even for a moment, the whole world will just go, just like it was before the creation of the world. And the Alter Rebbe continues in the second chapter. And this is an answer to the heretics, those who don't believe in the Eibishter. And this is the basically exposing the root of their mistake. What is their mistake? HaKoifrim b'hashgacha pratis. They deny in the concept of divine providence. Why? Because shemedamin ma'aseh shamayim va'aretz la'ma'aseh enesh v'tach pulosav. They compare creation of the world just like the work of a man, of a person makes something. So the Rebbe also made a world. They compare the two. Says the Rebbe, says Alter Rebbe, no, it doesn't work that way. Ki kasher yayatzo latzeiref keli. When the smith finished forming a certain vessel, shuv ein hakeli tzorich lidei atzeiref. The keli, the vessel, doesn't need the smith to keep on doing something. Once it's done, it's done. Shehu yesh miyesh, because all he did was he took a piece of silver, which was already an entity, and he just changed the picture of it, the form of it. But he didn't create anything. Mashenke de Eibester lemaise shamayim va'aretz shehu yesh me'ayin. When it comes to the creation, what is it? The Eibester created something from nothing. So when you create something from nothing, you constantly have to revive it. If the power, the force, the drive from the creator to the things that are created would go away for a moment, the nivra would go back to nothing. So now we understand the Mishnah beautifully. The Mishnah is saying everything that I created, the Rebbe says everything that I created for my honor. You may think that just like a regular king, the moment that he is the king by the coronation or like by the creation, everybody's into it, but then once they leave, it's over? No. By the Eibishter, Hashem yimlech leilam void. The Eibishter reigns forever. If that's the case, now we understand something beautiful. Why this is the Mishnah that we read always before Shavuos and before Rosh Hashono. Why? Because what is the common denominator between Shavuos and Rosh Hashono? In both of them, we talk about the coronation of the Eibishter. How do we see the on Rosh Hashono? Everybody knows that. We coronate. We say We say that the Eibishter should become the king of the world. Where do we see the coronation on Shavuos? Did you ever think of it? Shavuos is the time of giving of the Torah. What does coronation of the Eibishter have to do with that? The answer is the common denominator between Shavuos and Rosh Hashanah is that both have to do with shofar. By Rosh Hashanah, of course, we blow the shofar. On Shavuos, B'shas Matan Torah, when the Rebbe gave the Torah, it says, "Vayhi koila shofar." There was a big, strong shofar that worked there. What's the concept of a shofar? Shofar is coronation of a king. Where do we see that shofar is coronation of a king? Go to source number 12. Then this is in Likutei Sichos. In Garelik Chav Dalet, there's a beautiful letter that the Rebbe sent out for Rosh Hashanah. As you know, the Rebbe twice a year sends out a general letter to to the Jewish people all over the world. The Rebbe started this from the first year when he took over the Nesias, when he took over the leadership of Lubavitch. The Rebbe sends out a letter for Pesach, and the Rebbe sends out a letter for Shavuos. So in the early years, it was one letter for Pesach and one letter for Shavuos. In later years, the Rebbe started sending already 2 or 3 letters around Rosh Hashanah time. 1 or 2 before Rosh Hashanah and 1 between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And the same thing is with Pesach, 1 around Rosh Chodesh and 1 around Yud Aleph Nisan, etc. And these letters are magnificent, where the Rebbe brings out a concept connected to that Yom Tov. So in the letter of Tashim and Beis, the Rebbe writes as follows. Look at source number 12. Mitzvahs hayoim b'shofar. The Gemara says that what's the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah? The mitzvahs hayoim b'shofar. The whole idea is to blow a shofar. Where do we see the concept of shofar? We say it in the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. We bring Ato nigleisa ba'anan kvedecho. You, Eibishter, appeared to us when you gave us the Torah in a cloud. Ubekoil shofar aleihem eifata. And you appeared to the Yidden with a sound of a shofar. So we see that by Matan Torah there was a sound of a shofar. Says the Rebbe, there does a kertam futkiyas shofar. This reason why they would blow the shofar. Why? Because when the on Rosh Hashanah, because when the Rebbe gave the Torah to the Yidden, he had a shofar. Says the Rebbe, kumt behemshech tzagor iker dikentam. There is even a more important reason why we use shofar. Not only because this is what the Rebbe used when he gave the Torah to the Yidden. Shofar is verbunden mit der teure Krönung von der Beure Olam als Melech Olam. The shofar is to crown the Eibishter as a king over the world. Was die Krönung von einem Melech, the crowning of a king, how does it work? How do you crown a king? What do you do? Werd begleit von Schalen und Trompeten, is accompanied with the sound of trumpets. Wie es steht, like it says in the Pasuk in Tehillim that we say every Friday night and other times, Shabbos morning, Bachatzoitzres vekol shofar, that with trumpets and the sounds of a shofar, hariyu lifnei HaMelech Hashem, you jubilate in front of the king of the Eibishter. So what do we see from here? That the concept of Tkiyas shofar is twice a year, Rosh Hashono and Matan Torah. So now we understand, because on Rosh Hashono and on Shavuos is the time when we crown the Eibishter as the king of the world. Therefore, which is the Mishnah that we read right before the crowning of the Eibishter? We read the Mishnah, the last Mishnah, Pirkei Avos, where the Mishnah makes it very clear that the Eibishter is the king over the whole world. And it's not something like a regular king that once you finish the coronation, you leave and it's over. You have to remind yourself it's something which is constantly forever. And this is what we prepare ourselves to Rosh Hashono. And we come to the Eibishter and we say, yes, we constantly, in everything that we do, we live with the Eibishter. So now we understand why this is the Mishnah, which is said right before Rosh Hashono and right before Shavuos. But now comes the $1 million question, which I know you want to ask. Until 10 minutes ago, when do we crown the Eibishter? On Rosh Hashono or on Shavuos? You ever discuss this concept of crowning the Eibishter on Shavuos? Shavuos, always talk about Matan Torah Seino. On Rosh Hashono, we say, we talk about the Eibishter being the king of the world. Yeah, that's what we talk about Rosh Hashono the whole day. Malchias, right? The Eibishter has to become the king. That's one of the parts of Musaf, the special psukim that we say. Did anybody on Shavuos ever discuss coronation of the Eibishter? Yeah, we talk about Matan Torah. One of the details of Matan Torah was the shofar. But we talk about coronation? No. So why is it? Now we're saying that the shofar of Matan Torah is also like a coronation. The Mishnah, the last Mishnah Pirkei Avos talks about the coronation of the Eibishter. When does it make more sense that it should be said? Before Rosh Hashono or before Shavuos? What do you say? Before Rosh Hashono or before Shavuos? Of course before Rosh Hashono. So comes the $1 million question. What is going on here? Why is it that before Rosh Hashono only some say Pirkei Avos? Before Shavuos, everybody says Pirkei Avos. We said before, the Alter Rebbe says that between Pesach and Shavuos, everybody says Pirkei Avos. Between Shavuos and Rosh Hashono, only some say. Why? The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos is discussing the coronation of the Eibishter. When is the coronation? Rosh Hashono or Shavuos? Rosh Hashono. So it should be the other way around. That before Shavuos, only some say, those who understand how Shavuos is a coronation of the Eibishter, they should say it. But before Rosh Hashono, everybody crowns the Eibishter as a king. So why are we saying this Mishnah before Shavuos, everybody, and before Rosh Hashono, only some? And now we're going to see something very, very interesting. What is the difference between Shavuos and Rosh Hashono? Shavuos, the Yidden were like tzaddikim. What does tzaddikim mean? They came out of Mitzrayim, got rid of all the schmutz. They had 7 weeks of preparation. They were getting ready and refining themselves till finally they came to the highest level, and then the Rebbe gave them the Torah. They were like tzaddikim. Once the Rebbe on Shavuos gave them the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu went up on Har Sinai to get the Luchos. Came down 40 days later. What did he find? When was 40 days later? On Shivas B'Tammuz. What did he find on Shivas B'Tammuz? What did he then do? Chet HaEgel, the sin of the calf. So Moshe Rabbeinu had to go up again to the Eibishter, and he had to daven. And he went up for 40 days. And then he had to go up for another 40 days. Finally, he came down on Yom Kippur, right? And what happened on Yom Kippur? The Rebbe said, I am forgiving you for all the sins. So it's explained in Chassidus that Shavuos, the Yidden are like tzaddikim, righteous. Everything is nice and dandy. Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the Yidden are like Baalei Tshuva. People who have to return to their roots because things were done incorrectly. Now, I must say I missed that disclaimer here, which I've done many times, and I will continue doing it if I have to. And that is that the term that's used today, Baal Tshuva, is a wrong term. A person who yesterday didn't know about Torah mitzvahs because of whatever environment he was in, and today he got the opportunity to find out about it, and now he embraces Torah mitzvahs, that's not a Baal Tshuva. That's a good Jew. That's a good person. Yesterday he didn't know, now he knows, and he chose the right path. Baal Tshuva means someone who was on the right path. He went off the track, and now he's coming back. Okay? That is what the real Baal Tshuva is. So therefore, most people should be in the level of tzaddikim. Some people have to do tshuva, because a person is usually on the right path, and once you're on the right path, you continue going on the right path. Who has to do tshuva? Someone who's on the right path, then for whatever reason he swerved off a little, and now he's coming back. So the normal is tzaddikim. The abnormal is Baal Tshuva, someone who comes back to his root. So now we're going to be able to understand now beautifully what the difference is over here with the last Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Go to your source, number 13. This is where the previous Rebbe explains this concept of tzaddikim and Baalei Tshuva. This is a maimer for the a maimer from the Rebbe in the year Tavshim Mem Zayin. But maimer starts by Yom Hashmini Atzeres Tielachem Tavshim Mem Zayin, which is printed in a few places. In the third chapter, it says the Rebbe say, Ikar HaKavona de Matan Torah Shetiye Kabbalah Satayra. The main thing of Matan Torah was that the Rebbe wanted to give the Torah to the Yidden. However, the Rebbe gave two sets of luchas, two sets of tablets. The first one and the second one. What is the difference? Luchas Harishona is the first tablet, Hu Avodas HaTzadikim, is the Avodah of Tzadikim, as we learned in a previous class. I'm sure you remember the difference between these luchas. Beluchas Acharona is, but the last lucha is Hu Avodas HaBaalei Tshuva, is the Avodah of Baalei Tshuva. Nesinas Luchas Harishona Haisa mitzad lemaila. The first luchas were coming from above, milamaila. Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. The Rebbe came down on Har Sinai from above, because tzaddikim are constantly taking from above. The world, the mundane world, is below them, and they're on top of it. The be'eis matan Torah hayo etzlom gilui etzem haneshama b'chinas yechida. When the Rebbe gave the Torah, their full neshama was in full glory. However, the giving of the last luchas, it was through the people's request. The fact that they did tshuva for the chet ha'egel, for the sin of the golden calf, it was a awakening from below. That's what brought that the Rebbe to give the luchas achronis. It was coming from below. The first luchas came from above, which is tzaddikim. The second one came from tshuva, from the returning. That's why the last luchas were when Tishrei, because the whole avodah of Tishrei comes after Elul, which is the month when we do tshuva, etc. And that's the concept of Tishrei. So therefore, now you're getting why we say that Mishnah. Everybody says it before Shavuos, and only some say it before Rosh Hashono. Very simple. What do we say as an introduction to Pirkei Avos? Kol Yisrael yesh lam chelek l'olam haba. Every single Jew has a portion in Olam haba. Shenemar, because it says in the pasuk, ve'amech kulam tzaddikim, that they're all tzaddikim. So, how do we look at a Yid? We look at him as a tzaddik, or we look at him as a Baal Tshuva? We look at him as a tzaddik. Therefore, when does everybody say Pirkei Avos? Till Shavuos, because Shavuos the Yidden are tzaddikim. That's why everybody says Pirkei Avos before Shavuos. Yesh noyagin, says the Alter Rebbe, there are some that also have to do it in the summertime, which is tshuva. Because Amech kulam tzadikim, everybody is on the right path, everybody is a good person, and therefore he says it between Pesach and Shavuos, because Shavuos is the time of tzadikim. Some also needed before Rosh Hashono. So therefore now we understand why this is the Mishnah that we say right before Shavuos. As we said before, because this is the Mishnah that shows on the real coronation of the Eibishter. And before Shavuos is the coronation, how the Yidden as Tzaddikim coronate the Eibishter. And before Rosh Hashanah, it's only as Bali Tshuva, as those who went a little off track and now they're coming back. They are the ones who need that extra push, and therefore they say it also in the summertime. Everything clear so far? Yeah? Beseder. So, now comes the question. According to this, we understand why everybody says it before Shavuos. But not everybody says it before Rosh Hashanah, because we want to say that ve'amich kulam tzadikim. So what happened all of a sudden? That now we all say Pirkei Avos also during the summertime. Why only in the last few decades did this happen, that everybody says Pirkei Avos also in the summertime? Are we trying to say that we all went off track and then doing tshuva? What is going on here? This already the Rebbe doesn't discuss in that Sikha. But when we look at that same Maimer of Bayem Hashmini Atzeres a little further, I heard this from then. When the Rebbe said the Sikha, I heard this from a very clever chassid. And he said that if you look further in the Maimer, you will understand why Taka now everybody says it. Let's look at source number 14. The Rebbe says as follows. It is true that there are tzaddikim, and there are those who do tshuva, and amich kulam tzaddikim, that's the path. However, says the Rebbe, omnom hakavana ha'amitis, what is the real goal and intention for this creation of this world? We say it at the end of Kiddush every Friday night, that the Eibishter stopped working on Friday and he sanctified Shabbos. Why? Because the Eibishter stopped working. Asher bara Elokim, from what the Eibishter was creating, la'asos, to do. What does it mean to do? Says the Medrash, letakin. The Eibishter did not create houses. The Eibishter did not create cars. The Eibishter did not create Sefer Teiros. The Eibishter created material, wood, animals, etc. Now a person has to come and take stones and make a house, take an animal and then takes the skin and turn it into a Sefer Torah. It is humans who have to take planet Earth and develop it, that it should become the Eibishter place. Continues the Rebbe, Sheha'adam al yedei avoidasei, that a person through his work, yaseh chidush behabriya, a person should make a novelty in the creation of the world, sheyiyeh, that it should be in a way what eventually is going to happen when Mashiach is going to come. What is it? Peretz ze Mashiach. Yehuda had a son, Peretz. Peretz means the one who breaks through barriers. That goes on Mashiach. K'meshekasuv yala Peretz lifneihem. That the one who's going to break all barriers is going to come up, and that's Mashiach. Which means that Mashiach is not just going to come and take the regular world. He's going to do some breakthroughs in the world from the way that Eibishter created. The world is going to be on a much higher level than it was from when the Eibishter created. The Eibishter created the world at this level. A person, through developing planet Earth, he brings the world to a higher level. And by doing that, it's going to do Shanashamas de la'asid lave, the neshamas when Mashiach will come, yiyu gvoyhus yoser gamme adam marishan k'mei shehayo kedem achet. The level of the people is going to be, when Mashiach comes, that their neshamas are going to be on a higher level than even Adam Marishan before he sinned. How is this going to be done? How do you get to such a high level? Says the Rebbe, the chidush zeh, this novelty of being able to do such a breakthrough, to reach even such a higher level, nase al yedei hatshuva dafka. This is done through the concept of tshuva. Which tshuva? There's two types of tshuva. There is the tshuva, which we discussed before, when a person's on the right track and he falls off and he comes back. But then there's a higher level of tshuva. What is it? Continues the Rebbe, Tezehu mashe Mashiach oso lasova tzadikayo betiyufta. What Mashiach is going to do, that tzadikim will have to do tshuva. There's a misconception, the concept of a tzadik. everybody thinks, what's a tzaddik? A person who's on the right track, and slowly but surely he makes sure to keep and not to go off the track. No, that's not what it is. The context of tzaddikim, to give a very simple example, imagine there's an escalator which is coming down. You ever go into the department store or in the airport and you see these escalators coming down? What do the kids do when they see such an escalator? Right? They run against it. Now, if the kid, and sometimes also some adults, yeah. If the person who's on the escalator against the current, the escalator is coming down and you're going up. If you're going the same speed as the escalator, then you're standing in one place, just like a treadmill. You're standing in one place. If the person goes a little faster than the escalator, then the person is going up. But if the person is going a little slower than the escalator, then he falls down. A person is constantly on an escalator going down, and he constantly has to go a little faster to be able to grow. A person cannot be today satisfied with what he accomplished today and tomorrow be in the same place. Tomorrow he has to go on a higher level than today. And the day after tomorrow has to be a higher level than tomorrow. A person must constantly grow. Tzaddikim seems, the way people understand it is, that a tzaddik, he reaches a certain level and then he stays at that level. No. Every day he has to go a step higher. If one day he doesn't go a step higher, then he falls. So he has to do tshuva. And this is something that many people never knew until Chassidus came out. Until Chassidus came, people who went every day, davened and learned, and they felt very complacent with where they are. They didn't see themselves in a race that they constantly have to be better than yesterday. They thought that as long as they're doing the right thing, that's what it is. Mashiach comes and says, no. Even tzaddikim have to do tshuva. Something that is a very revolutionary. Because it seems like that they don't have to do that. Only someone who goes astray has to do tshuva. No, Mashiach says, even tzaddikim have to do tshuva. Val yedei zeh nishlemo hakavona ha'amitis shelamaylo me'inyan b'minim lachrim shesein tzal tzaddikim. Only at that point, when everybody realizes that everybody has to do tshuva, that's when Mashiach is going to accomplish what he has to. One of the examples that we usually give to this, which is a very interesting, it's a long subject, but very in a nutshell. We all know that there are three Beis HaMikdash. There's the first one, built by Shlomo Melech, the second one, built by the people who came back from Golus, and the third one, which is going to be built by Mashiach. The first one was destroyed. The second one was destroyed. The third one, we say is going to be eternal. Why? How do you know? Just like the first two were destroyed, maybe the third one also will be destroyed. How do you know the third one is going to stay forever? The answer is very simple. The first one was built by who? Shlomo HaMelech. In the time of Shlomo HaMelech, it was a time of tzaddikim. Everything was beautiful, nice and dandy. The second one was built by who? Eile Bavel, the people who came back from Golus, which that represents, not tzaddikim, represents Baalei Tshuva. Says the Rebbe, tzaddikim is very nice, but the Rebbe wants a blend. Everybody should be equal, together, one thing. Tzaddikim is nice, Baalei Tshuva is nice, but they're not communicating. It's two separate things. The Rebbe wants Barcheinu Avinu Kulanu Ke'echad. We should be blessed because we are all one, we're all united. We need the blend. So we said before that tzaddikim represent the Lemaila, the above. The Baalei Tshuva represent the Lemata. And we need to make a blend between the two. The third Beis HaMikdash is going to be a blend. How's the third Beis HaMikdash going to be? We say every day in davening, in Ozi Ashir, Mikdash Hashem Koinenu Yodecha. The third Beis HaMikdash is going to come from heaven. On the other hand, if you remember, we learned the Rambam says, Moshiach Yivne HaMikdash, Moshiach is going to build the Beis HaMikdash. So who's going to do it? The Rebbe or Moshiach? The answer is both. It's going to be the Lamaila and the Lamata, and both together, it's going to be a blend. Once we have a blend, that there's no difference anymore between Maila and Mata, between above and below, that's when the world is complete. In the time of Galus, the world seems like that there's godliness, there's a world, there's absolutely no connection between the two. This is how it was until Mashiach comes. Once Mashiach comes, we're going to see how the Gashmius of the world, how the world in itself is Elikus, is godliness, because we're going to have the blend. And this is what's happening here with our Pirkei Avos. Until our generation, we had two types. We had Ve'amich Kulam Tzadikim, and everybody says before Shavuos, Ve'amich Kulam Tzadikim, everybody. Then we have the Yesh Noyagin, then we have those who Nebach, they need to that extra push, during the time of the summertime, because unfortunately they went astray, and therefore they need the Pirkei Avos also in the summertime. That's what says the Alter Rebbe, Yesh Noyagin Kach Kol Shabbos Zakais. There are those who need that also in the summertime. Now, when we are right before the time of Mashiach, we have to have the blend. There's no more differences. We are all equal. Tzadikim, Bali Tshuva, everybody together. What Mashiach is going to do, as we said in the Maimer, Mashiach osid lasova tzadikaya b'tiyufta. There is no difference. And this is in essence the core, the foundation of Chassidus Chabad. That because every single Yid has a neshama, there is absolutely no difference between one Jew and the other. One could look like a tzaddik gomer, the other one could be in the dungeons. No difference, because everybody has a neshama. We're all in the same boat. When we are in that point, that we are all equal, tzaddikim, bali tshuva, there's no difference, everybody together, tzaddikim have to do tshuva, that is when we know that we are coming to the final goal. So now we understand why this Mishnah is said before Shavuos by everyone, and why only Yesh Noyagin, that they say it right before Matan Torah, because this is the Mishnah that is the perfect hachana, preparation to the coronation of the king, to show that the Rebbe is constantly the king of the world, Shavuos and Rosh Hashono. And now, it's not only Yesh Noyagin Kol Shabbos Zakayit, everybody says it together. Why? Because we're bringing out a concept to the Eibishter. Eibishter, we are one. We have broken all barriers. There is no differences between one and the other. There's no difference between Gashmis and Ruchnis. We know and we see that this world is a Dir Lo Yisborech, is a house for the Eibishter. And this is the best preparation for Rosh Hashanah. And there is no question that when we come to the Eibishter on Rosh Hashanah with the preparation of Pirkei Avos, that we say, Eibishter, everything that the Rebbe created is for your honor. And we actualize this. Why? Because Hashem Yimlech Leilam Vad, because the Rebbe is constantly the king of the world. We do it in all our actions. This is the best way how we are going to get from the Eibishter a ksiva v'chasima teva, l'shana teva m'sukkah, that we're going to be ascribed for the best year ever, because Emir Hashem, even before Rosh Hashanah, because the Rebbe sees how we have broken all barriers, and Mashiach is called Ola HaPeiretz Lifneim, he is going to give us the ultimate redemption. And this Rosh Hashanah, instead of us blowing the shofar, we're going to have the Tkaber Shofar Gadol L'Chereseinu. The Rebbe is going to blow the shofar, the great shofar, the shofar of Mashiach, which we are going to hear Teikef Umiyad Mamash. Any questions? When did the Rebbe say the Sikha? Everything besides for that last point of Mashiach Chosid Lasava Tzadikai B'Diyufta, the Rebbe said it in Shabbos Parshas Nitzavim Vayelech Tov Shin Lamed Vav 1976. You could look it up towards the end of that Farbrengen. That is where the Rebbe discussed it, the whole difference of why everybody says it before Shavuos and only Yesh Noyagin Kach Kol Shabbos Zakayit. Now I have to make it very clear, as I always do, that I just took one little point from that Sikha, but really that there is so much more to talk about it, as we saw before, that it talks also about the Tzilus, Bri, Yetzir, Asiyah, and everything together. But again, we usually try to say at least something just to get everyone motivated and to learn more and more Sikhas, and through this we'll be Zeicha to hear from Mashiach the Torah Chadasha Me'iti Teitzei. Ksiva v'chasima teva.